As I watch all these lower court judges trying to stop Donald Trump and moving forward and auditing the government, which should have be a constant thing. It shouldn't be we waiting 20 years for an audit on the government. But anyway, topic that arises is insurrection. Are we looking at insurrection, but from not, and I can't say Democrat, Republican, because we now know they are a uniparty. They're all in alignment with the British control over America. So is this an insurrection from that group?
Well, that's a good question. Now, what you're seeing is that all the Democrat libtard judges. Now, if we know that they're a Democrat judge, they shouldn't be on the bench, period. If you are partisan, then how can you make a balanced judgment? That's not possible. So the second that you have a Supreme Court justice complaining to Trump about some policy that could come before her, and then she doesn't recuse herself, that's grounds for impeachment. The grounds for these six judges that came after Trump, well, remember, we talked about this a little bit. Somebody had to go to that judge with some stupid thing, which probably was somebody directly a part of the shadow government. And they went to, of course, the libtard judges. And, of course, the libtard judge did an ex parte with nobody there to defend Trump or the Constitution or his actions, which have already been said by everyone who has a brain, are completely ridiculous, and the cases will be thrown out. One of the six judges backed off. But really, is this not a conspiracy for insurrection to overthrow the executive by the judicial branch? And is this not the exact moment when Trump should say, okay, I've had enough of these federal judges, and simply pull it back? You don't have to have all those federal judges. That's overreach. It's like the overreach of USAID, which was the CIA's arm of to go out and beat up other countries. That's really all that was. When you look at these programs, again, you've only seen the tip of the iceberg. And as he says, he's going after education and then the Pentagon and then the treasuries, which means the U.S. Federal Reserve also. There's even bigger fish out there. He would be shocked to understand the whole rigging of the stock market, the way that it's all done through the U.S. Treasury. So once the truth comes to light, I don't know, since he's giving the chance for all the rats to jump off the burning boat, I don't know who's going to get indicted. But if he can't get Samantha Powers, but you see, again, these are kickbacks, as he said the other day. Kickback. Well, I have to assume there's kickbacks. Aren't there kickbacks? Surely there's kickbacks. There has to be fraud. So if he says fraud, and if there's fraud with these judges coming after him, which there was, that was collusion. It was a conspiracy. And it was truly the undermining of the judicial system, which had been going on through his first administration, the 4 years in between, and continuing now. So he has to stop the judicial system, which really, when these judges are appointed, and most of the time appointed for life when they're in the high positions, that basically means that they get an offshore account, and anyone who brings a case to them before it ever reaches the court or any indictments or anything else, they know what the judge's decision is. That's just the way it works. This is the way it works in any court. The lawyers know, once they know what judge they're going before, what the outcome will be. So what Trump is doing is just absolutely the perfect thing. He set them up, he baited them, and now what he's going to have to do is hire just a huge amount of lawyers who can carry through on these cases, because the loudest people who are the most guilty are screaming and yelling and saying, throwing their bodies in front of the doors of the USAID building or at the Department of Education. That's how stupid they are. They really believe we didn't know, and they really believe that they want to continue on their gravy train.
Well, wait until their constituents find out that they don't get their payments. It's just going to stop. All of this fraud that exists in Social Security is just breathtaking. But I wanted to bring to everyone's attention a post that I just put on Gab, and it's from a fellow cat down in Ecuador, Mr. Escobar, and he is asking for urgent assistance in preventing a catastrophe there. Seems like they are seeing a lot of voter fraud coming their way. Daniel Noboa. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm so sorry. But he's the presidential candidate that seems to be favorable with the people there. And they're concerned about this issue. The fraud is being orchestrated, he says, from Rafael Correa, who is a fugitive of justice, and it would probably be a pilgrim's placement. Well, anyway, this cat down there is doing everything he can to get the word out about our discoveries of election rigging. If I say the names, I'll be banned off of YouTube, so I won't say that. But my answer to him is really an answer for anyone out there that may be in this particular situation or others. Over the last 10 years, our team has put together reports. We call them citizen intelligence reports. Now, they're all over the place in the internet because we had to, be undercover and just get out our information where we could. But last year, 2024, we worked to put them all together in one location so that you can get them. And I urge you to go. If you go to ourspirit.com, in the middle of the page, you're going to see this free download. When you go there, the files are huge, but you can easily navigate it by using Control F. You just put Control F and you'll see a little bar come up and you type what you're looking for. So I encouraged him to look up some of the terms that you would expect to see in that type of election rigging. But this system that we are giving you is so profound because it's the indictable evidence you need for almost every swamp critter we have run across and more. And our team, they don't just say someone is corrupt. They go in and get those financials. They really pull it apart. And these are things that you could even use in your own lawsuits.
I just want to mention how the USAID works and the fact that, as was just said, we have put out intelligence reports that show you exactly who the fiduciaries are, who are the people who are on the committees that make the decisions, that make sure that there's no compliance reporting at all. There's no follow through. Many of these things are loans. Like, remember the $1.5 billion that Joe Biden threatened Ukraine with, that he was going to leave in 6 hours, and if they didn't fire the guy who was going after his son, Hunter Biden, and his oil deals in Ukraine, that he was going to take it away, right? Well, that was USAID. Well, this is what they do. This is the way that they manipulate other countries, and many of them are guaranteed loans. And when you look at the loan amount, you go, that's a huge amount. Remember, if it was an OPIC loan, it was oftentimes for 10 years, and organizations that don't even exist got the money. So all you had to do, everyone knew this. If you're a libtard and you're out there in the big world, you just go to a libtard center called the Democrat Center, and you sign up to do something stupid with your purple hair. And what happens? You start to be paid. And you go, what? I could be paid to do just being basically the resistance, being an agitator? And these organizations, they hardly exist at all except to receive the check. And they are the NGOs that have manipulated elections, politics, the whole direction of protected classes of people, which is going backwards in human evolution. We don't need caste systems, and we don't need to separate people by some kind of, the reason DEI and ESG and all that stuff is all illegal, and why Trump can stop it everywhere, is because it's discrimination. And they are the people, the libtards, who set up the organizations to go after people who were, in fact, they said, being discriminatory against what? Against tiny minorities of people. So anyway, what's going on here is so beautiful. Anyone in Congress or the Senate, all they had to do was go down to the USAID office and say, I want to bring democracy to Siberia. And they'd say, no problem. And they'd take the idea, no organization, no nothing, without ever saying who the anonymous person was that came up with the idea. They would get their cut for administrative. We described all this. They get their cut administratively. Nothing ever goes there. So the money is sitting in a pool that usually is then it's just a slush fund for the USAID. That's why Samantha Powers walked away with $30 million after being the head of the USAID. And this is true with everyone who ever went near there. And Republican, Democrat, didn't matter. The Democrats were the worst. And Trump is just finding this out. So He was attacked in the first administration so powerfully he didn't know these forces. We warned him this would happen to him. We told him exactly how it would happen. They would come in and say, sir, you really have no power. One representative after the next for these organizations would come and tell him, sir, you don't have any power. Because with Obama had all power. But the second Trump came to power, he had no power, and he didn't know the system. He knows the system now. So the Insurrection Act they used on him. And because he had to figure a way around it and through it and understand it, he's now can use it against the judges, against anyone who's protesting, against anybody who wants to create an organization like, so let's say Gavin Newsom spending $50 million to write a bill to resist the president's, the administration's policies. We have whole agencies that spread the president's administration's policies to the whole world and to America and propagandized everyone. But here's Gavin Newsom. He's going to resist it and use money to do so. Because Trump took $4.3 billion from his choo-choo train from L.A. to Las Vegas. That's why. But anyway, the point is that it's just a beautiful time because as these people are trying to say that what he's using, which are the tools they used against him, so these are people who can dish it out but can't take it, he just simply he doesn't even respond to them. He doesn't have to respond to them. It just will go away because he will do something that goes right to the heart of their fraud. And fraud vitiates everything. So these judges, if these 6 judges ever talk to each other on the phone, that's fraud. They can be impeached. Because it shows it was a conspiracy to attack a sitting president and take away his executive authority. And they call what Trump is doing a constitutional crisis. But when the libtards did it, it was the law, and we had to obey it, and we had to accept it as it was stuffed down our throat. So what we're seeing here is just a turn, and you wanted me to mention why in May of 2024, the sun gave a CME burst. I've been saying this for as long as Tyler's known me. See you tomorrow night. Say, well, if we're not hit by a CME, a huge CME of protons hit the Earth that left a proton belt that has never happened in history before in the Van Allen belts. And so now we have a proton positive pushing against the already existing usually negative or neutral electrons in the plasmasphere coming into the Earth, pushing down plasmoids, these light orbs everybody sees. Well, that's also consciousness. And so we've reached the point that people can say, there's what? There's these little warmth critters in the air of plasma that look as if they're alive and they can defy everything science has ever told us since we were a child? Yes, correct. And that's happening everywhere. And we couldn't quite figure out why, but this proton plasma belt, technically, you could say, in the plasmasphere, in the Van Allen belts, right, the same size as the Van Allen belts, was a gift from the sun to take us to our next mutation and our next evolution and our metamorphosis, in my opinion. And there's just more good news everywhere you look. $20 billion on those way out. Biden stuffed it into the EPA, already designated so that it would be paid because, he had to get his money into his friends, 8 different agencies. And it's all just a bunch of nonsense, of course. And so the head of the EPA, I love it. Every time you hear one of these people that Trump has put in these federal agencies as, secretaries and cabinet members, they're saying the same thing he's saying, and it is just unbelievable. They're being attacked on all fronts. Hegseth goes over to the NATO meeting to talk about the fact that all, the warmongers in NATO want to go into Ukraine. They already have. Actually, they've cheated numerous times. And then what does he say? No, he reads obviously a prepared statement. And I think the only person who writes like this or speaks like this is Stephen Miller. But anyway, he clearly tells them, no, Ukraine is not going to get into NATO. No, NATO is not going to go into Ukraine. And if anyone goes into Ukraine, it's a peacekeeping mission because basically he, as I said, one day, All it would take is one telephone call between Trump, Putin, and Zelensky. So Trump called Putin first, decided what parts they're going to give up, which that's what all this is about. Then he talked to Zelensky, and Zelensky just, lied and cheated, begged, and, once taken 100, according to, there's over $100 billion missing. So now what's going to happen here also with Seth? He basically told them what Trump told them in his first administration is, you're not going to use us to manipulate us to get into a war in Ukraine. We have already decided, he didn't say this, but this is true, we know this to be true, that Trump's conversation with Zelensky, because you see Zelensky, he does a video where he's got this map of his minerals for his country, and he's basically saying, here, Mr. President, you can have all this, and look at this. This is $1 trillion worth of lithium, and you'd have all these. He's practically on his knees begging. As I said, Trump would solve the Ukrainian war with one telephone call. Now he sent his people, his negotiators, over there, and they're going to. There's not even going to be a peace negotiations. There's a Trump deal, and the Trump deal is going to give. The deal was Ukraine said, and they kept using this as their excuse, we need to have the same boundaries we had in 2014, before 2014. And so Trump says, no, forget that. You're not getting that. You're going to get what I give you. And Putin, he's going to give Putin a bunch of stuff, right? And then it's going to be back to, just the way it was before, where Putin is friends with Ukraine and sending all the oil into Europe, and Europe is friends with Russia, and everybody's friends, and that NATO doesn't really get to start a war this time because of a stupid treaty.
So everybody makes friends again, but what happens to the British Pilgrim Society? Because they're behind all of this, Babylonian Radanites, they need their war to prop up all of their corruption. It is illegal for an American citizen to financially contribute in any way to acts of terrorism. We know that. That's why we don't do it out here. But now it has become apparent that our tax money is being used in that way. I won't even go through all of the stuff that's coming out, how USAID and other monies are being used directly towards terrorism around the world. For that, we should not pay our income taxes. We can't, because it is illegal to support that kind of activity. So I'm asking everyone who has the courage to do it, because it is courage. You will be, I can't come and save you if something goes awry, but research the way that's most comfortable with you and hold back on your 2025 taxes, federal taxes, that is.
And put it in a designated fund.
I'm sorry I have to call you. We are not giving financial advice. Everybody can research it on their own, because somebody who has a W-2 is going to be different than somebody who pays quarterly taxes. So everybody has to research it, and do what they can.
Tax form, it gives you a choice of being exempt. Has anybody ever wondered what that meant? It is voluntary, okay? But anyway, so what we're seeing now is just incredible. We're going to see the judicial system gone after, the education system. First off, people are upset about the Department of Education closing. Immediately.
Here's what Trump said. Immediately. Somebody asked, how soon do you want the Department of Education closed? He said immediately.
Yeah, immediately. Yesterday. Why? Because it's all fake. It didn't exist before, and for a long time it didn't exist, and we don't need it to exist. We need states to have their own systems. We need to get the federal government out of our local schools, because they put up standards that can't be met. They give no assistance, and then they come up. The only thing that the federal government ever did in any school I was responsible for, which was a whole bunch of them, was to come and to charge the school with discrimination. Well, what do you think DEI is? What do you think ESG is? What do you think all of these policies that we spent billions of dollars on in the Biden administration, what do you think that is? That's the worst form of discrimination. So let's get discrimination out of education. Let's protect our schools. And let's take a whole new look at everything. They call it a constitutional crisis. It should be a constitutional crisis, because our Constitution had been overthrown.
I like it that these new computer systems that they're using are outing agencies like USAID, some of the others that we're seeing, because they're warming up, they're perfecting to go after the Pentagon. I cannot wait to see the corruption in the Pentagon.
Well, we know that Rumsfeld came and said that when there's it's actually $2.5 trillion missing when they did a pseudo audit on him. He came out and said the following: there aren't any two offices in the Pentagon that can talk to each other. Everybody's got their own system. They cannot share information. They cannot coordinate. They do not have a budget. They do not have bookkeeping for budgetary lines. And he says that it is impossible, exactly as I've said before. I'm so glad you found that clip, that it is impossible to audit the Pentagon, and it's impossible to audit the IRS, and it's impossible to audit the USAID. But we did a good job 8 years ago.
Well, maybe we should say humanly possible, but now with all these superpowered computers, it can be done.
If the information is there, they can create a LLM, a large language model, and then they can manipulate it. It's kind of like, when you do a control F and then you do a query. That's all this is. But first you have to get it in a form that can be scoured for metadata, which is not that hard to do. As a matter of fact, I think, how many did Trump got? How many does he have going in there now? 1,000? 100. Oh, 100 of these geniuses. Well, remember, they're Asperger's, and they are great with machines. They're not good with people. But man, their brain is symbiotic with the machine. And so they can go in there and they already have things prepared, 2 or 3 keystrokes, and they can take something like Palantir's OpenAI, designate the data source, dump it into LLM. That's the only thing that's going to take a minute, is because the old systems will take a while to integrate with the new. And then after that, it's like, oh, let's see everywhere that Pelosi's name comes up. Let's see every check that ever went out of USAID to the person who made the suggestion to where the money should go. That's the only way you're going to catch these people.
How many contracts do we have here with Serco?
Hundreds and hundreds. Serco runs everything for us in this country. We need to completely get rid of that. Yes, that's what I was saying the other day. If they think this is something, wait until they find out how much has been ripped off from the U.S. Patent Office, and also how many Crown agents there are, how many Serco contracts there are. I mean, for God's sake. And now they're coming out. I saw just now somebody trying to say that Elon Musk was wrong about the $9 million and Trump was wrong about the $9 million that went to Reuters to do. No, go look up the program. The program is a military weaponized attack of propaganda, and who better to ask than Reuters? And so Reuters is going, no, we didn't do that, and this was a blah, blah, blah. No, that's what they're all going to do, and every time they come out to defend themselves. Welcome to the show today. We're going to be talking about a new book that has just come out on Amazon. It's one of our 24 books you can find on Amazon. It's called The Etherization of the Blood. These are the secrets of ascension. And we've given them to you before from different points of view, but today we're going to talk about it from the perspective that we put it in this book, which is essentially, if you have done your preparation, if you have reached the stage of enlightenment, in my opinion, that means you know you're immortal, which is not all that hard to do. Then you're ready for the stages of initiation. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the ethers, and we're going to talk about plasma, and we're going to talk about the process of ascension.